We're warming up. I think we might be live right now.
Good. Everyone can see.
They can see our contorting faces to make sure we look good, right?
I think it's a very important part of puppetry, right? To have flexibility in all parts, dexterity in all parts at the ready.
I'm with you on that. But anyways, let's begin.
Yeah, welcome everyone. We're live on the Ballard Institute Facebook page. Once again, today we have a very special Connecticut State of Emergency edition of Ask a Puppeteer. My name is Felicia Cooper. I'm the graduate assistant at the Ballard Institute, and I'm a third-year graduate student at the UConn Puppet Arts program.
And I'm Elise. I am going to be a senior next year in the UConn Puppetry undergraduate program. Super excited. I'm here at my parents' house today, even though I moved into my new apartment because we don't have power. But I'm excited to be here today. We're gonna have a good talk about all sorts of puppet things.
All sorts of puppet things.
Yeah. But you can feel free to throw any questions you have for me and Felicia into the chat. This can include things like building questions, questions about what our lives are like as a puppeteer, especially during these crazy, unprecedented times. Even, I don't know, just anything you really want. It's up to you. But we also have some things that we'd like to talk about too. So if there's no questions, we're not just going to be standing or sitting here awkwardly.
Well, Tracy says, what a powerhouse of puppetry. And to that, I would say, is Tracy looking in a mirror? But also, I'd say, like, of course, UConn, the Ballard Institute, we are very lucky to have so much support to allow puppetry to survive, not only survive, but thrive in these trying times.
It's true. I can't believe we're still doing puppet things like, you know, for monies during these times at the Ballard. It's great.
It is great.
Tracy asked another question. What's your favorite things about puppets? I'll let you answer that first, Felicia, since I just asked the question.
Sure. I'd say my favorite thing about puppets. First of all, I have a lot of favorite things about puppets. Almost every time that I've been to a puppet show or a puppet event, at some point I turn to the person next to me and I exclaim how much I love puppets, as though it's a new revelation every time. Because they're really special. And I think the things that are special about them is, first of all, that anytime you're performing a puppet or watching a performance of a puppet, you're engaging in like a contract of imagination. And so you're asking people to imagine with you, whether as the audience or as the performer. And I think the thing between the object that we're asking to perform as the puppet is a really special thing. It's pretty rare, I think, in this world that we have the opportunity to imagine together. And I think now more than ever, we need to be able to imagine what this world can be through puppetry, through whatever we need to. And then also the community of puppeteers is a very, very special one.
Yeah.
How about you, Elise? What's your favorite thing about puppetry?
I really second all those things. Puppetry is just so magical. I say that all the time. As we know, I'm fairly new to puppetry. I guess not really anymore, but I switched into, the major of puppetry from something completely unrelated because I just found puppets to be so magical. Because every time we see like these characters that aren't necessarily human-like, you usually only see it on television or something. But puppets are a way to see things that, only your imagination could create on in the actual physical world. And I just think that is so cool. I especially love puppets that are like aesthetically beautiful and everything, whether it be like in the way they were built or painted or how they move. But I just really find puppets, I think magic is the word that really sticks out to me there.
I mean, the job of puppetry is always to create something that doesn't exist in the world yet. Right? So like it is magic. It is making something new that it never existed before.
Yeah, giving it life. That's the coolest part.
Oh my gosh, you're so right. You're so right.
Someone I can't speak. Someone was once saying that puppeteers are like gods because we give life to things. And I was like, that's a really epic way of looking at puppetry. Just saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, another way of looking at that is like most puppeteers have some element of like control freakness in them, because it's like, as puppeteers literally build their own worlds to control and to bring life into. But I like, those are like two sides of the same coin, right? Like it could be this like beautiful, magical, like generative, creative thing, or
Mhm.
like, oh my God, I just need to have control over everything.
Yeah.
I like your way of thinking about it though.
Yeah, I feel like my way is very simple because, like, you know, I haven't done like a lot of like super academic study into puppetry yet. I'm kind of like just beginning on that. So my way of viewing puppetry is very emotional from the heart, if that makes sense. But I don't know. Uh, there we go. It's like, how did you get into puppetry, Felicia? I've actually never asked you that. Since we're talking about what we love about puppets, what made you get into it? When did you get into it?
It's a great question. And I think a question that almost anyone who deals in puppets has at some point, encounters at some point. And one thing that I remembered recently was, do you know in the movie To Kill a Mockingbird?
I haven't seen it.
Oh,
Sorry. Tell me.
There's a moment where like the objects are very important in the movie. Like objects are like hidden and then reclaimed. But there's a moment when Scout wears a costume of a ham.
Hmm.
And I remember as a kid being like, oh, she made that? She could just be a ham? And like, it's really silly. But like, when I look back on the things that I remember about media that I consumed as a child, almost all of them had some element of puppetry or like object performance or major costumery, right? Sesame Street, etc. But yeah. the like journey to puppetry was I went to my undergraduate degree for theater and developmental psychology. So I was thinking about children and how children think and develop and understand. That was my minor, right? Not my major field of study. My major was theater. And I went to a pretty strict conservatory, and we were making pretty classical theater things and like really kind of like very square musical theater things. And I really wanted to just like take more risks and do more things, have more opportunities. So luckily some friends of mine created this really experimental theater company where we just started making things in each other's basements and in the local park, just anywhere we could find space. We started making projects and kind of doing the things that we cared about and devising new works. And so in doing that, I found myself really drawn to puppetry and really drawn to puppets. And every project that I ever proposed, I was like, and we should do puppets. And finally someone was like, I actually don't think we like puppets as much as you do. And I was like, I don't like love them. And then I was like, oh no, I totally love them. Yeah. They're my favorite thing. So then I moved to New York and I started just like asking, this is a long answer, but I just started like asking different puppeteers if I could like sweep their floor, if they would just like talk to me about puppets. Yeah. And they did. Like I said, it's an incredibly generous community. Yeah. And so I just started hanging out around puppet studios, and then I did Bread and Puppet. And then I was just like, oh yeah, this is it. This is what I want to do. And then I just kept doing it. How about you, Elise? What brought you into the world of puppetry?
I do not have as much of an elaborate story with that. I came to school as you know, as a business major, which is, I feel like, the exact opposite of puppetry. I was involved in theater in high school, but never puppets. And I remember I was in a learning community with UConn, which is basically like, you live with a bunch of like students with similar interests, and I chose the arts one. And then part of that was we got to do a class together. And in that class, we toured the puppet building and the museum, the Ballard. And I remember thinking, this is really, really cool. Like, it's blowing my mind right now. And I'd never seen anything so like exciting in my life, if I'm being honest. Like I knew as soon as I toured that building, I was like, I need to at least take a class here at one point. So then I signed up for a class my next semester, and that was mask making class, which was coincidentally my favorite class at UConn. I actually can show some of the things that I made in that class. I can show the screen, right? There we go. Can you see that?
Yeah, I can see it. I think our audience can see it.
There we go. So I just made those masks, and we got to like perform them and everything. That was my first time really ever making anything. My favorite mask to make was that one right in the middle, right underneath my name. That was the Il Capitano mask from the Commedia dell'arte, like art form. I'm gonna stop sharing now.
What material did you make that out of?
I made that out of H form. H form is kind of like the lesser known version of Warbler, which is like often used in cosplay actually. It's basically a thermoplastic, which means it's a plastic that when you heat up, it takes a shape, or you can kind of like mold it, and then when it cools down, it holds that shape pretty well. I love Warbler in H form. It is kind of expensive, but it's like a really good material for whenever you want to, I don't know, make some like puppet heads or masks or something, or cosplay too, because that's actually what it's traditionally used for. But that's my building tip just for everyone. Look into
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
And Elise is a super talented builder, so definitely go ahead and ask her all your building questions.
I'm still learning. But yeah, anyways, after I took the math class, I switched into puppetry. Big switch. No one in business has ever done that before.
You made UConn history.
Woo, that's me. I think we have a question from Megan Jeffrey, one of my favorite viewers.
Oh my gosh, she's such a star.
I know. I was just saying with Emily, the things that she creates like every week, they just blow my mind. I'm like, wow, Megan, she's the idea.
The Picasso cranky?
Yes, that was beautiful.
So beautiful. Great job, Megan.
You guys should check out her stuff when you get the chance. But anyways, what is your experienced go-to method for collaborating on an original puppet show? Starting with character, starting with a plot, riffing on something known and familiar, etc.
Great question.
That is a good question. I have to think about that actually.
Well, outside of so in UConn, we often have like pretty strict assignments, which can be really generative, right? Like if you have guidelines and creating within those guidelines, if you have restrictions or whatever, creating within those restrictions can be really helpful. So if you have to make a hand puppet show about Connecticut history, that's, that is, which was an assignment that Elise and I had last semester. That's one way to go. But if you're just kind of like out creating, my work is really based in community. And so what I would do is connect with some sort of community, whether that be like a grant-based connection that I make to, like I've worked with different shelters and community centers, and see what they care about and what they want to make a story about. So usually I start with like themes or ideas, or like right now I'm making a show about like time and how our relationship to time has shifted during this pandemic. So I really start with like themes and ideas, and then I work those I try to find the image, like I think Enneagraph it's called. No.
I don't know.
Ideograph? What is her name? Julie Taymor gives a really wonderful speech about how every show that she does can be boiled down into one image.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I try to find.
Yeah. Sorry.
What's that?
I said we learned that in our movement class actually, like how you boil things down to its essence, basically.
Exactly. And I think once you get to the essence, the image, that's at my place. Sorry. Who knows what's going on?
Okay.
Then from there, I try to figure out what else is generated from that one image or a few images. And then I go to movement. Yeah. How about you?
I do something actually really similar. I start with themes and everything. Often, however, I find myself inspired by movement I just see like in my everyday, or like a picture I see in my everyday like life. And this is kind of weird. Sometimes I will actually have dreams, or like I see something kind of cool in my dream, and I'll wake up and I'll be like, that's a fantastic idea. And I haven't actually developed like a ton of shows as much as I have like just regular puppets, because sometimes I like to just, make puppets, and then someday maybe a show will come out of them. That's probably not the way to go, but I really like.
Why wouldn't it be?
I don't know. Just because like, building puppets isn't as like, not for performance, isn't as marketable as puppets for a specific purpose. But I don't know. I think I would say I just usually like to kind of start with things that just strike my inspiration or like around. I don't know. That's how I've actually been like developing these workshops. I've just been kind of walking around my house like, what recyclable materials can I use to make a cool puppet? And that's how like most of these workshop ideas have come about.
That's awesome.
I don't know.
And I think being inspired by materials and maybe making the puppet and then seeing what it wants to say, like all of those are valid, legitimate ways of getting to the show or the story or the piece.
Yeah, everyone has their own method. It kind of depends on the piece too, right? It's like, what's it for? I don't know. How long is it going to be? But yeah, that was a good question. That's the thing we could talk about for the entire time, I feel like. You know?
Yeah. Because like, are you creating in a vacuum? Are you just saying like, I want to make a puppet show? Or are you like, I want to make a puppet show for this group of kids at my library? Or I want to apply for this, you know, workshop. And so I want to make ideas about this, you know? Or are you just saying, I just want to make a puppet show?
Yeah.
There are so many ways to go about it.
True. But yeah.
Thanks for that question, Megan.
Thank you. Yeah. I have a fancy little list of questions here.
You're so smart.
I don't want to cheat. I'm letting people know. Felicia, how do you feel about classes being online this semester? Because, you know, this is like our last year for both of us. Why don't you tell me about how you feel about that?
Well, I mean, I'm bummed. I think everyone is bummed. And like, I'm not going to pretend that it doesn't stink. Nobody wanted, like, I have to share with you, and this may come as a shock, but I think the pandemic is awful. I know it's a controversial opinion.
Yeah.
It's not easy to make these adjustments and changes. In a large sense, though, I think it allows us to think about things in new ways that we might not have otherwise. And I've never felt closer to a new version of what this world can look like. So that's, you know, I don't want to sunshine it and just make things happy, but I think that there are generative things that can come out of it. But that said, how do I feel about classes being online?
Or do you have like any insight? Like, I'm sure people are wondering how, like, I keep getting the question, how are you as a puppet student going to do all classes online? And I'm like, actually, like, there's like plans in place for this.
Yeah. And actually, so this is my, just the year where I make my thesis project.
Oh, right.
As a graduate student. So I'm not involved in any classes really. So I feel like maybe this question is more suited towards your opinion.
Yeah.
And your creativity.
Yeah. I actually.
And you were on NPR about this.
What did you say?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I was.
Elise was on NPR.
Yeah, I talked about why I thought we should be back on campus, but safely. I fully support, of course, all of the precautions we need to take. But anyways, classes being online, I think a lot of the times, or like what's coming up, we're going to start seeing hybrid classes where I think, let's be real, not 100% of classes have to be online. For like, I don't know, a lot of the times we're doing things like script analyzing or talking about text or developing ideas with each other. And I think that can be done effectively through Zoom just as well as it can in person. I do think that building, it's definitely harder to teach that over Zoom just because it's so hands-on, you know, and you really need to like be there to understand what everything is being said. But I think that that's like gonna still happen. It's gonna be, you know, different because I don't know, I think we're gonna only be letting like a couple of people into the building at a time or something. Definitely lots of like one-on-one time with the teachers. But I still think it's gonna go well. Like I think it's gonna look different, like you said, but new things are gonna come out of it. And I think we're gonna be okay. I'm kind of excited about this semester still. So
I'm super excited.
Yeah.
What's that?
I said, who wouldn't be excited about the semester? But you know what I mean.
Yeah. And I mean, so there are certain things that can be taught via Zoom, right? Some of them are like, they shifted one class instead of mask making this semester, they're doing object performance. And so it's all things that you have at home, right? Like there are so many different approaches to puppetry that it can be adjusted to online. Like it's such a vast world. Puppetry can mean so many different things to so many different people that there's maybe a lot more flexibility than people realize. And also puppeteers tend to be super creative people. And so we're gonna find creative ways of being safe.
Yeah, I've participated in a few puppet slams over the summer and the things people are submitting like through video now, some of them are so cool. Like it's just, they would have never had to do that had there not been a pandemic, but they got like a really cool piece of artwork out of it. Like people are doing things with video editing and green screens. It's awesome. And you can do that for cheap actually, which is, you know, not commonly known. But yeah, I think puppetry is evolving in a cool way.
I think so too. I'm totally seeing different things than I would usually see. You know, like a lot of this jokes that we see over and over again at the slams, or the kind of, like, I feel like we're breaking out of those ideas, which is really exciting.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. But I feel like my senior show, because when you become a senior, sometimes you can choose to do a show if you want. And I did choose to do that. I had decided to do the show before COVID ever hit. And I really had to like make some huge alterations to the concept in order to make this work. But now it's going to be an outdoor, socially distant show, and the puppets are going to be like, you know, big puppets so everyone can see it. And I think that's really exciting because I think, I don't know, like puppetry might shift to being outdoor more often than, you know, in a small, intimate theater setting. So I think that's kind of an interesting direction I see it taking too. Not only with my own show, but like
Totally.
like Bread and Puppet does that all the time. So maybe more people will kind of take a leaf out of their book. Yeah.
To put their stuff larger and do things that, you know, you couldn't do in a theater space,
Yeah.
you know, which puppetry can adapt to. I feel like it's a lot. Yeah, I think it's kind of a unique opportunity to break out of that theater space, that proscenium.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do we want to answer this question and then we can start to talk about our projects?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Megan Jeffrey asked another question. Thank you, Megan.
She's a star.
What would your tips and tricks be for puppeteering on one's own due to quarantining because of COVID and wanting to film and have music and all the rest, most of which is easier with another set or two of hands?
Oh, boy, do I hear that.
Maybe I fully support you going like wild with your imagination and everything, but don't be overly ambitious, I guess is the first thing I want to say. And I don't mean like, you know, cut down what you want to do and everything. Just make sure it is possible with one person. Because I think a lot of the things I've seen where like online shows didn't quite work was somebody just had all the ideas and it couldn't be achieved in the amount of time with like just the one set of hands. In our movement class, we're always told that if your story can't be boiled down to like its very like essence, like if it can't be told in like, I don't know, just like a series of pictures or one picture, you need to simplify it more. So maybe that kind of applies here. Like make sure it doesn't need to be overly complicated to be a good show, you know? Just stick with the basics of what your story is and the basics of what your puppets are and everything, and it will be fantastic.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips for that, Felicia?
Well, Margot Rose always said, keep it simple. And she was of the great Connecticut Rose Puppeteers, who are really incredible. Worked on Howdy Doody, all a million different things that really shaped early American modern puppetry. But I'd say two things. First of which is look to examples from the past. You know, I think it's awesome when puppeteers know their history and have an understanding of how others have navigated similarly difficult times. And then practically, I would say, figure out what video app works for you, what video editing app works for you. You know, like it took me a while to figure out like, oh, actually, this one is more intuitive to me than this one, you know, and then it stinks and I don't like to do it, but I've had to like spend some real time looking up YouTube tutorial videos of like how to cut, how to edit, how to make music. Definitely not. Oh, Megan Jeffrey took a marionette class with Jim.
Whoa.
Incredible. I bet that was a wonderful experience. Did you have tea? I hope you had some good tea.
Nice. I find that with filming, I prop my phone up against anything I can find. Like I've like balanced it on top of a cup before, like that you just gotta use your surroundings and make your phone stand up to record things if you're using a phone.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of like I know Chad Williams from Wonder Spark, as well as some other folks have put out. Oh, and Alex Vernon and Sarah Olmsted have put out some videos about how to make that jump for more traditional puppeteers. So they have on their YouTube, they've become great resources. Oh, I'm so glad you're familiar with tea and tea time. So Elise, we've got a couple minutes more here. I would love to hear about the project and how it's changed in the last few weeks and months and what your plans are.
Yeah, so I got an idea grant for the project, which is like this program UConn set up so that students can kind of like develop any idea they have, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be an artistic show or something. But I got the idea grant, and the show was originally, it's about a girl in the end of the world who starts kind of like imagining the things around her come to life for companionship, and it's kind of about her connection to herself and the world and others, or there aren't any others, but that's kind of the point, and about how that kind of like develops when you're all alone. Originally, the show is supposed to be set, you know, in a small theater space. I wanted it to be one of the D series at UConn possibly, or maybe performed in like the ballad space. But I'm not taking the chances with it. I was too afraid, because we don't know what the future is going to look like if things like that are going to be okay by the spring semester.
Right.
But then one of the reasons I also switched my major was because I absolutely love Depot campus, which is where you know, like the UConn puppetry department is. It's this really, I'm not gonna lie, a quite spooky area with all of these abandoned buildings and vines growing all over everything. Beautiful brick buildings though, like it's like inspirational to just walk around. And I really like it for its like apocalyptic aesthetic. And I was like, you know what if I did a show outside? Because that Depot campus is what's inspired me for all of like my post-apocalyptic, you know, themes loving that's been going on. So I decided to move it outside. And again, this was all because of COVID. This would have never happened had we not transitioned to being like online or socially distanced. And now the puppets are the story is gonna be told. It's still gonna be the same story and everything, but it's gonna be told through large puppets. And I do think I'm gonna have a human actor now. I wasn't sure yet, but it's gonna take place, you know, in like the fields of this Depot campus surrounded by these abandoned buildings. So I'm really excited for it. I think it's actually changed in a positive way, which is good for COVID, right? Like it makes me happy. Oh, what is the title of my project? Sorry, the title is Remnants, and it's going to happen at the end of the spring semester. We don't know yet, so that's probably going to be either at the end of April or the beginning of May. And people can learn more on my like social media pages. Maybe I haven't really posted too much about it yet, or just through like the UConn Puppetry page. But yeah, Felicia, tell me about yours. I took up a lot of time to just explain that.
You didn't take up a lot of time. You took up just the right amount, very appropriate amount of time.
Thank you.
Yeah. I was so glad to hear about it. And I think, you know, you show us how to think about things differently and how to remain adaptable.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, my project's also gone through some adaptations. It's funny that both of our projects also were kind of like about isolation and about like making do with what you have, because like it's become a theme in my life as well as in my work. And so my project is called Ish. It's a very allegorical take on Moby Dick. I guess I'll stick with that title. It's kind of gotten away from Moby Dick. But if Captain Ahab was like a 12-year-old girl and she's a maker. And so it all takes place on a submarine, and they're seeking out this whale. And it very quickly became a solo show. Originally, there were going to be 4 people in the show. But like I said, I realized that I didn't know when it would be safe to rehearse. I didn't know how sustainable that was. And so I decided to just make it a solo show. So the only characters in the show are the young girl and the submarine and the whale. The puppets that are involved are shadow puppets. They're, you know, she'll take things and kind of like move them around as objects. And there's, you know, some scenography that happens within the submarine that I'm working through right now, but it's very much, it's kind of maybe not what you would imagine when you think of like a puppet show. But I'm really inspired by the Open Eye Figure Theater's driveway tours, where they take a smaller show and they go to different communities to perform them. And that's them engaging with the community in different ways. So that's really exciting. And then how else have we adapted? Well, I ended up getting a grant from the Marx Family Foundation and a grant, the Connecticut Sea Grant, which supports artists making work about the ocean and about oceanography. And so it's been a lot more about the relationship to the whale and about the relationship to ocean plastic, ocean pollution. So those shifts have occurred as well. Yeah.
That sounds awesome. It sounds so innovative and just different from like what you said, different from your regular puppet show. What I've seen from your work too, you always tend to like find the magic, I'm gonna call it, I'm gonna coin that term, even though it's definitely already a term, in like everyday objects. So I also think it's interesting that you went the route of doing a solo show versus I went the route of like social distance. So I feel like it's the two ends of the spectrum, right? Like how to put on a show during COVID. And we just showed two different ways.
I think what I really like about both of our methodologies as well is that like neither of us, and of course this had to happen for some, this is not like a judgment against pieces that were already in production that like needed to just get finished, but I'm feeling very lucky that we have the time and the resources in order to adapt, so it's not just a consolation of the thing that we wanted originally, but that so it's a new idea that we get to explore within these constraints.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I've been really grateful for all the support the Puppet Arts department is giving us. Like, I don't know about you, but I feel like everybody, like all the faculty has banded together to make sure that our shows are gonna like go on and be like good still. So yeah, I know what you're saying. I'm really grateful that we still are able to do it.
Me too.
Support system.
Yeah, especially in this time, I feel so lucky to be a puppeteer and so lucky to be able to do what we do. I know it's a really hard time for artists. So I feel very, very lucky to have the support that we do. And for my project, if you'd like to follow along, you can sign up. I have a newsletter that I send out like quarterly that you can sign up for on my website, which is Felicia TM, T as in Tom, M as in Mary, Cooper.com, FeliciaTMCooper.com. If you sign up for the newsletter there, I'll email you every once in a while. I'm also on Instagram. I think it's Felicia Cooper is my name. And then I'm sure, yeah, the UConn Puppet Arts program pages, the Ballard Institute pages. That's kind of how we'll be able to keep people updated.
Yeah. You can always just shoot a message to the Ballard Institute Facebook page too. Since me and Felicia, are workers, we will see that message and be like, here's the information you need. Yeah. I think we've run out of time, unfortunately. That went by really fast.
It did. I'm so happy to hear so many different, I'm so happy to hear all your insight, Elise. I feel like I learned so much about the way you think about puppets.
Me too. That was great.
Oh yeah. So if you want to speaking of staying tuned in the Ballard, we've got some really exciting workshops next week, and a forum next week as well, I believe.
Yeah.
So Matthew Cohen.
Yes.
I know him.
Professor here. He's doing I forgot exactly what the title is, but he's done a lot of work in like wayang kulit puppets, like the puppetry in Indonesia. And he's going to be talking about it. We love that man. He's a great professor. And then next week I have my workshop. That's the literal glove puppets workshop. I'm not talking about like glove puppets like Mr. Rogers style. I'm talking about we are actually turning like dishwashing gloves or whatever you have into puppets. And then you have a story building workshop, right?
Yeah, one thing that we've been getting a lot of questions about, and I think Megan Jeffries had a great question about this as well, is how do you build the story of a puppet show? And like, this is something I have a lot of trouble with. It's the hardest part of making a puppet show for me, is finding the arc of the story. And so I'm gonna do a workshop and share some of the tips and techniques that I think through, both when I'm either working in a community or working in a classroom, and just the ones that I use on my own. So we're gonna work through some story building exercises.
Yeah, that workshop sounds really exciting. I was just looking at like the itinerary for it, and I was like, I might want to attend that.
I might want to attend yours. Yours are great too.
But yeah, we hope to see you next week, everyone. Thank you for coming today. If you're here, I know a lot of people don't have power in Connecticut right now, or around in New England.
Yeah, it's really hard.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Felicia.
Thank you, Elise. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Frank Ballard.
Running this. You're the best, Emily. All right. Bye, everyone.